The topic of today's lecture is gymnosperms, and the gymnosperms are the first plants that bear seeds. So they use seeds for reproduction, and this is very important in the survival of the plants. So if seedless vascular plants and brevets require water for reproduction because they produce spores, gymnosperms don't require water, and they use seeds for reproduction, and this is an evolutionary step in the development. And the gymnosperms include the four phyla, and there are four evolutionary lines: cycads, ginkgos, conifers, and coniferous. And the ginkgos and the cicado and cycads are not very spread nowadays, but there are some remaining plants from the past. But in the past, they were very significant part of the flora. The Gnetophyta is a very unusual plant that looks not like other gymnosperms. So most of the gymnosperms today are conifers. So that is why we begin with the conifers, and there are about 600 species of conifers, and that includes pines, hemlocks, spruces, and firs. And I think these are most familiar trees among conifers, and the Christmas tree is the most well-known plant in the world, I think. And most of the conifers are the woody trees or shrubs, and they produce secondary tissues, wood and bark. And there are some herbaceous conifers too. So the wood, that is actually secondary xylem, consists of tracheids, long tapering cells with peaks through which water and dissolved minerals move from one cell to another. Many conifers produce a resin. This is a viscous, clear or translucent substance consisting of several organic compounds that may protect the plant from fungi or insect attack. The resin collects in the resin ducts, tube-like cavities that extend throughout the roots, stems, and leaves. Cells lining the resin ducts produce and secrete resin. Most conifers have leaves that are megaphyls called needles. They are commonly long and narrow. So this is a Christmas tree, and traditionally uh, is put in houses during the New Year. And needles usually are long and narrow, tough and leathery. Pines bear clusters of 2 to 5 needles. So this is one cluster of 5 needles. And the leaves are scale-like and cover the stem. So the stem is covered with the leaves. Most conifers are evergreen and bear their leaves throughout the year. Pine needles, which are evergreen, have a thick, waxy cuticle and stomata that are sunken in depressions. These features are water-conserving adaptations that enable the pine tree to retain its needles throughout the winter. So usually in winter, the low temperature inhibits the roots from absorbing water. So most conifers are monoecious, and they have separate male and female reproductive parts like the females and male cones. Uh, and they are located in different locations of the same plant. These reproductive pods are generally borne in strobili, commonly called cones. So this strobili is cone, hence the name conifer, which means cone bearing. Conifers occupy extensive areas ranging from the Arctic to the tropics and are the dominant vegetation in boreal forests, the forest northern regions of Alaska and Europe and also Siberia. In addition, they are imported in the southern hemisphere, particularly in wet mountains, areas of temperate and tropical regions in South America, Australia, New Zealand, and Malaysia, as well as China, with more than 60 species of conifers. So, uh, and there is a large diversity in conifers, especially in the China and Japan. Uh, the genus Pines are by far the largest genus in the conifers, consists of about 100 species. A pine tree is a mature sporophyte. So this is a pine tree. Pine is heterosporous and therefore produces uh, two kinds of spores, microspores and megaspores. So microspores are produced in microsporangium and megaspore produced in megasporangium. Uh, so the microspores and megaspores are produced on different cones. Male cones, usually 1 centimeter or less in length, that are much smaller than the female cones. So this is a male cone, this is a male cone, this is a female cone. And and usually they occur in dense clusters on the ends of the lower branches uh, each spring. The more familiar woody female cones, which are on the 3-year-old, are usually found on the upper branches of the tree and bear seeds after reproducing. So this actually female cone, this is one is empty, this is with the seeds, uh, and this actually is a scale from where the seeds um, will grow. Female cones are very considerably larger in size, and the sugar pine produces the largest female cones, which reach a length of 60 centimeters. So 60 centimeters is like a water lemon. So each male cone, also called a pollen cone, consists of sporophylls. So this is a male cone with a sporophyll. Uh, Leaf-like scales that bear sporangia on the underside. So this have microsporangia. This is the cross-sectional cut of the microsporangia. At the base of each sporophyll, there are two microsporangia, 1 and 2, and they contain a microspore pollen grains. Each microspore mother cell undergoes meiosis to form 4 haploid microspores, and microspores then develop into extremely reduced male gametophytes. Each immature male gametophyte, also called a pollen grain, consists of 4 cells, 2 of which, a generative cell and a tube cell, are involved in reproduction. So this pollen grain makes a pollen tube, and then starts the reproduction. The two other cells soon will degenerate. Uh, Two large air sacs on each pollen grain provide buoyancy for wind dissemination. Male cones shed pollen grains in great numbers, and wind currents carry some to the immature female cones. Uh, Many botanists think that the female cones are modified branch systems. Each cone scale bears 2 ovules or megasporangia. So this is a megasporangia, and within each megasporangium, meiosis of a megaspore mother cell produces 4 haploid megaspores. One of these divides mitotically, developing into a female gametophyte, which produces several archegonia, each containing 1 egg. Uh, so this is an egg cell. Uh, the other three megaspores are non-functional and soon degenerate. So this the process of the fertilization is and development of the egg cell and sperm cell are very common, the same as in the seedless vascular plants. When the ovula is ready to receive pollen, it produces a sticky droplet by the opening where the pollen grain lands. So, and then the pollen grain will land and stick here. Pollination, the transfer of pollen from the male cones to the female cones, occurs in the spring for a week, after which the pollen cones wither and drop off the tree. One of the many pollen grains that adhere in the sticky female cone grows a pollen tube, an outgrowth that digests its way through the megasporangium to the egg within the archegonium. So the pollen tube will grow. The germinated pollen grain with its pollen tube is the mature male gametophyte. The tube cell and the generative cell enter the pollen tube. The tube cell is involved in the growth of the pollen tube. Within the pollen tube, the generative cell divides and forms a stalk cell and body cell. The body cell later divides and forms two non-motile sperm cells. The pollen tube, when it reaches the female gametophyte, discharges the two sperm cells near the egg. One of these sperm cells fuses with the egg. And this process is called fertilization, and to form a zygote or fertilized egg, which subsequently grows into a young pine embryo in the seed. So here the two seeds are growing to the, and there is an embryo in each seed. The other sperm cell degenerates. The developing embryo consists of an embryonic root and an embryonic shoot with several cotyledons, or like embryonic leaves. The embryo is embedded in haploid female gametophyte tissue that becomes the nutritive tissue in the mature pine seed. A tough protective seed coat surrounds the embryo and nutritive tissue. The seed coat forms a thin, papery wing at one end that enables dispersal by air currents. A long time elapses between the appearance of the female cones in a pine tree and the maturation of seeds in these cones. When pollination occurs during the spring, the female cone is still immature, and meiosis of the megaspore mother cells has not yet occurred. After the megaspore has formed, eggs take more than a year to form within archegonia. Meanwhile, the pollen tube grows slowly through the megasporangium to the archegonia. About 15 months after pollination, fertilization occurs and the embryo begins to develop. Seed maturation takes several additional months, although some seeds remain within the female cones for several years before being shed. So this is a male cone, and this is a shed female cone. In the pine life cycle, the sporophyte generation is dominant, and the gametophyte generation is restricted in size to microsporic structures in the cones. Although the female gametophyte produces archegonia, the male gametophyte is so reduced that it does not produce archaeridia. The gametophyte generation in pines, as in all seed plants, depends uh, depends totally on the sporophyte generation for nourishment. A major adaptation in uh, a major adaptation on pine life cycle is elimination of the requirement for external water as a sperm transport medium. Instead, air currents carry uh, pine pollen grains to female cones, and sperm cells accomplish fertilization by moving through a pollen tube to the egg. Pine and other conifers are plants whose reproduction is totally adapted for life on land. So I think that is all for today, and thank you for attending the lecture. So any questions?
Thanks, teacher. No,
So Hala, questions?
no, thanks.
Okay, so if no questions, then so Hala asked me to make today's class online. So I will send you a link. So please, so for the group that has the practice, we will make it online. So then see you next week or online today later. Bye bye.
Bye.